The problem of monks who touch money with their hands instead of having having an assistant who would keep the money, or rejecting all of the money donation if there is no assistant, which is very necessary part of monk's life. If the monk doesn't do this, if the monk thinks, who cares, I will use the money for good things, not for bad things. So for these frivolous monks who do not take care about the Buddha's decision, they destroy the Buddha's teachings through their ignorance. They are not aware of the fact that if they touch money, it is breaking precepts, and whatever they buy, if other monks use that, they will also break precepts, even if the other monks have no idea that this was bought by a monk. So we need to look at this more from the Vinaya, from the monk's point of view. This has nothing to do with lay people in the outcome, but as for the conditions, for the reasons, this is very much dependent on lay people. If lay people never ever hand cash into monk's hands, then the monk will never have cash in their hands. It's just that simple. So lay people are those who need to start with this, and lay people are usually those who make the problem worse. So there will be monks, who would not like, who don't like to touch money, but because they're in a community of other monks who happen to touch money, and the people just come and they hand the money, and there is no assistant for them, then they just say, okay, well, I do this for the community, for the peace of the community, and they accept the money, and then they are spoiled. So then they accept money. Okay, so what am I going to do with this money? Am I going to throw it into dustbin, or am I going to buy something? And usually they go and buy something. So that's where it starts. If the people never ever offer money, if the people never ever give money to monks' hands, and they always say, "Venerable sir, do you have an assistant?" The monk says, "No, I don't have assistant." So they will say, "Okay, Venerable sir, do you have any phone number to any of your donors?" Then if the monk has a phone number, then the donor can take phone number of the donor, and they can decide with the donor where to keep that money for the monk. So then when the monk needs something, he may not have an assistant, but he has this donor who comes time to time. So the monk can then tell his needs to the donor, to the person who comes to a monastery time and again. So this way, lay people need to think how it is possible to resolve it, not how it is not possible. Like this is not the way to think about things. You do not think how it is possible to kill this human being so I am peaceful. No, this is not the way to think. How do I resolve this problem without killing this human being? This is the way to think, and this everybody understands here. And I'm using this to explain to you that monk's money issue needs to be resolved the same way. You do not think how it would be possible to give the money into the monk's hands. No, you think about how it would be possible to avoid giving money into the monk's hands. This is the way how you think. So never ever give money to a monk, but monks who touch money, they are still monks. They are still full-fledged monks, and their monasteries are still full-fledged monasteries. They are not allowed for monks to use, but I will tell you a secret which you should never tell to anyone. So it's just only for you and not for anybody else. And that is that if a monk who buys a monastery passes away, then the property of that monk, if he was a monk, goes to the Sangha, to the community of monks, and it is blameless. So if a monk buys a monastery and then he passes away, then even though the monastery was bought by money, after the monk passes away, the monastery can be freely, and it's not only for monastery, it's for anything else. It's for books or for chairs or furniture or anything else. Even food is a little bit complicated issue, but for anything that the monk bought, if he passes away, the property becomes property of the community of monks, and it is blameless, even though it would be a ground for serious blame if the monk was alive. If the monk is alive, that monastery cannot be used by any monk in the world, and there is no way how to clear up the monastery from the blame. The only way that the only thing that the monk can do is to abandon that monastery and just never ever visit that monastery, and no other monk in the world ever is allowed to use that monastery again until the monk passes away. And this is the same thing for all things, for all possessions that the monk bought with money. But there is again a secret, a little trick how to resolve these things, and that is if the monk donates, if the monk gives up the monastery to his parents or to somebody who specifically requested the monk to ask for anything the monk needs, the so-called 4 requisites donor, pisilibadaka. So if somebody comes and says, "Oh, Venerable Sir, whatever you need in the world, as much as I can, I want to give it to you. Please tell me what you want, what do you need?" Then this saying turns that layperson into a whole life supporter. And the monk then is allowed to ask that person for anything the monk wants. Of course, the monk needs to be wise, and he will not ask a poor supporter, for a Mercedes or Ferrari like that. So the monk needs to know what to ask for. So it's not that simple, but the monk is free to ask the person whatever is intelligible if the monk needs it. And if there is a person like that, or parents who do not need to request, they're always supporters of the monk, whatever they do, the monk can give the monastery, or he can give the possessions to this person, to this donor or to the parents, and then ask them back. But he needs to give it to them like really, it must not be a play, it must... Yes, it must be real giving. How do you know that you really gave? If the parents reject to give it back, or if it gets broken on the way, for example, there will be some paperwork, but for Vinaya, no paperwork is needed, actually. No paperwork would be needed. So the monk just needs to give it up to the parents. He doesn't need any signatures or anybody's presence or approval, or nothing is needed. It's only about the mind. So if the monk in his mind entirely has abandoned the possession with the complete acceptance that it will not be given back, or that it may get totally destroyed before it could be given back, then the monk can request it back. And the monk can request it back, and when he is given it back, it is totally pure. It is totally pure. So, yes, so they donate it back to the monk, and the monk can then use it, and any other monk can use it, and there is absolutely no blame attached to that monastery or possession. But this is unfortunately very rare, and monks do not know this. Even very highly educated monks who memorized all of the Vinaya Pitaka, all of the 5 scriptures of Vinaya Pitaka, still they usually don't know it, or if they break these precepts, but such monks are rare, they will usually not break the precepts like this. They will not do it, because they think that they know it all, so they don't care about anybody else. But true is that, according to Vinaya, either passing away of the monk or giving the possession to a donor or to parent and then requesting it back is the way how to purify the possession. So you do not, but this has nothing to do with lay people, again, in terms of the outcome, not of the cause, of the very primary cause, when the lay people give money into the monk's hands. So in terms of outcome, people never need to worry about it. So you can go to monasteries bought by monks, you can use books or anything that monks have bought. This is absolutely fine for lay people, but monks who follow rules, for example me, are strictly prohibited to ever use it. So even for me as a monk who follows rules, if I enter a monastery which I suspect that may have been bought by money, I need to consciously make sure in my mind that I do not enter the monastery in order to find shade in the monastery or in order to find a cool place. I must not use the monastery for a pleasant purpose. I entered the monastery only because that's the way how the ground continued, not because there is a roof or because I would get any benefit from it.